All right, welcome everyone to the Adult Diploma Working Group webinar for January. Really great to see you. Go ahead and continue introducing yourself in the chat as you're coming in. Your name, your pronouns, your program, and our question was, what are you doing to keep yourself healthy and well this winter? Good intentions count, Heather. All right. So I'm Jody. I'll introduce myself a little more in just a moment, but as we get started today, I just want to go over with you the plan for the next few hours. We do have 3 hours set aside for our meeting today from 1 to 4. I will try not to just talk at you for the entire time. We kind of have a variety of different ways for you to interact and be active. If we don't end up using all of our 3 hours today, I think nobody will be sad about that, but we do have scheduled until 4 o'clock if we need it. So we'll do some intros. We have some updates and reminders for you. We'll talk a little bit about sort of the current review process and some best practices about evidence that have come out of current or recent reviews. We'll spend a little time talking about high school credits and high school transcripts, as we frequently do at these meetings. We have an updated competency completion options document to share with you. The update to that is really about adding HiSET to that document. So we will walk you through that and talk about it. And at the end of our time today, we are going to have some smaller group discussions in breakout rooms. So I do just want to give you a heads up for that we really are hoping to use this time and this space today, at least part of the time and space, to be in a little bit smaller groups and be collaborative and do some networking, make sure you are all connected to each other. So this is your heads up that will happen a little bit later, and we will ask you to turn on your camera if you can, if you're comfortable in your breakout group. And there may actually be times in our large group meeting today as well that we invite you to unmute yourself and turn on your camera and participate. So just know that is a possibility for today. We don't want to spend 3 hours of you just sitting and listening, as that's not productive for anybody. So just a heads up that we hope to have your participation today. And yes, I agree. I personally dislike when I am surprised by breakout rooms. So hopefully this is your cue not to be surprised when that happens and comes up. All right, so we are going to start, as we usually do, with some introductions. There are a lot of people involved in the Standard Adult Diploma project and program, which is by design. So we're just going to kind of walk through, give you a high-level overview of all the folks that are involved. So I will turn on my camera for a minute so you see my talking head. I'm Jody. I am the program quality specialist on the Minnesota Department of Education team, and I am kind of the lead for the Adult Diploma project on our team right now, but I am really grateful for my colleague Brandy, who is also getting more and more involved in this Adult Diploma work as she comes on board our team this year. So Brandy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi there, I am Brandy Logan, and as Jody said, I am new to the team and arrived in June of last year, and I'm the high school equivalency and accountability specialist, and I aid Jody in Adult Diploma.
Thank you, Brandy. So then we have some other of our MDE staff that are also somewhat, to some greater or lesser extent, involved in this Adult Diploma project. I'm going to invite my colleagues, if they are on and would like to turn on their camera and give the group a wave. We have Brad, who is our state director, and Astrid, who oversees professional development. Julie is our transition specialist, and Neil is our support staff, who oversees our email list and other support staff things. And then we have a number of folks who provide support sort of statewide for different aspects of the adult diploma work. And again, I will invite these folks, if they would like to, if they're on, to turn on their camera and wave. We have Christine, who is our ELA and literacy content support at Atlas. So we often go to her with reading and writing type questions. We have Lindsay from Atlas, who is our math and numeracy specialist. So we often ask Lindsay to weigh in on all things math. Wendy from LAN, or Literacy Action Network. It provides a lot of logistical support. Wendy is our tech support here for this meeting today. So if you do have any tech troubles, you can chat directly to Wendy. And Jenny is SID support. So Jenny provides all of the help and support we need with the logistics of submitting adult diploma stuff in SID. Hey, Jenny. Oh, shoot, I think I didn't have my screen on the right place to see Lindsay's baby. But yes, I have seen her before. I can confirm she is adorable. All right, and then another group of people that are invaluable to this work that I am grateful for on a daily basis, pretty much. These are the folks who are the review team. They are reviewers who are folks working out, either currently or formerly working out in the field in adult diploma programs, who review all of the portfolios and evidence that are submitted for review. So again, I will invite you reviewers, if you're on, if you'd like to turn on your camera and wave to the group. Stephanie is here from Minneapolis. We've got Andy from Robbinsdale, Amy, who is up in Detroit Lakes area, and Christy and Vicky. So Christy is up in the northwest corner of the state, currently in the process of moving over the border to North Dakota. And Vicky is our other reviewer. Vicky is formerly worked for the DOC and brings us a really important perspective in terms of having familiarity with the corrections system. So again, these folks really make the review process possible. Otherwise, the volume of reviews currently just would be too much for our MDE team to work through, which is how it used to be. It used to be me and Brad did all of the reviews, and then it's just grown too much. We don't have a capacity to do that anymore. So that is how this team of folks came to be, and grateful for their work and their expertise. And then I want to take a minute to recognize Sue Smith, who was on our review team through this fall, and who recently retired. So we do wish Sue the best in her retirement. This does mean that our review team, we sort of considered it fully staffed at 6 reviewers. For now, we are just moving forward with 5. And we will see how that goes through this spring. And it's possible that in the spring, we might put out a call for new reviewers if we need to add back a 6th reviewer, or if any of the current reviewers decide at the end of this year not to continue. So be watching for that in the spring. And yeah, I agree, Sarah. It has been really important on the review team to have reviewers that have different perspectives across the state. We know we have very different kinds of adult education programming in different areas of the state. And so, yeah, it's been great to have that team of folks who really do have a variety of experience in a variety of different kinds of settings. All right, so I also just want to acknowledge that the Adult Diploma Working Group really is you, all of us. And if you are here in this meeting today, if you're listening to the recording, you are potentially or presumably a member of the Adult Diploma Working Group. And so this working group is really just meant to be a group, a convening of anyone who's involved in standard adult diploma across the state of Minnesota. So it could be teachers, could be advisors, managers, could be support staff. Anyone involved is welcome to participate in these quarterly meetings. And we do have the basic expectation that all approved adult diploma programs are sending at least one person to this quarterly meeting. This is a really important place for our MDE team and for the review team to disseminate information to the group and to get feedback back from the group and from the people doing the work out there on the ground. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for your continued participation in this group. And this has been a long time coming, but today, finally, we're going to get back to a practice that we used to have in this adult diploma working group, and that is to spend part of our time in content-specific subgroups. So just a little history about this. The adult diploma working group, started, I guess, back at the very beginning of this, which was 2013, 2014, 2015, as there was sort of legislative advocacy, and then statute was passed, and then had to define what is this adult diploma thing and how does it work, and come up with the original version of the competencies and the competency completion options. Back in those days before COVID, this working group was always an in-person convening. And in the last several years before COVID, so 2017, 2018, 2019, we were regularly quarterly meeting in the Minnesota Department of Education building in Roseville, in one of the conference rooms. There were often 70 or 80 people together in a room, and we had all day together, and we would often spend kind of half of the day in the whole group, making big group decisions and having announcements and big conversations. And then we would split into smaller groups in the afternoon to have smaller group conversations based on content. When we did that, we divided up into content area groups. I think they shifted a little bit over those years, but sort of towards the end of that time, we were meeting in an ELA group, a math group. We tried to keep science and social studies groups going, but there never seemed to be quite enough people for those groups, so those kind of got put together at one point. We had a group specifically for administrators or advisors, kind of non-instructional folks. So we are hoping to restart those today. I'm thinking that those content areas probably maybe still make sense. But it also, I think, is important to recognize that this group hasn't met in person since January of 2020. So we are now 3 years out. And I think we really have to recognize that we have a new way of meeting that's probably going to land somewhere eventually in a bit of a hybrid of sometimes maybe in person and a lot of virtual convenings. And the work, we kind of understand the work differently now, and we know more than we did 5 years ago. So it's possible this might be the point where we have some different groups or where we rethink how we connect with each other and what kind of expertise we want to think about together. So potentially this is a point where we could think about adding some new or different groupings. A couple of things that seem to me they might be relevant to the group is I know some of you are working in one-room schoolhouse type settings, and I know you maybe don't want to select either ELA or math or science because you do it all. I know some of you are working in correctional settings, both state correctional facilities and county correctional facilities. And I know there are some very unique sort of aspects to that kind of programming. So I'm wondering if it makes sense for you all to meet as a group, and there could be other things. So I want you to start thinking about that and sort of be asking yourself at this point which group you think might be a good fit for you, and we'll give you a chance to weigh in just a second. As you're doing this, I want to let you know kind of what we believe the purpose of these subgroups would be. There's sort of a twofold purpose. One is that we hope the subgroups would be a benefit to you as individuals showing up to this quarterly meeting, in that it would help connect you and help you build your network with other individuals that are doing similar kinds of work or working in similar environments across the state. So we hope for it to be a benefit to you and a networking opportunity for you. We also hope that these groups bring back a benefit for the larger group. So we envision the subgroups to be a space where we can sort of have specialized discussions, and where people with a particular expertise could bring that expertise to specific decisions. So if we have to make a decision specifically about writing, that would be a place where we could give the ELA group, the ELA subgroup, sort of some responsibility and some authority for discussing and coming to, a decision together and recommending it out to the whole group. So that's what the subgroups are meant to do. So I would like you to weigh in. Oh, sorry, we sort of changed the plan about this after I wrote this slide. So not in the chat, but instead we have a poll for you. I would like you to weigh in about which subgroup you would be interested in participating in today. So I think, Wendy, can you go ahead and launch that poll? Awesome. Okay, so you should see a poll up there. I would like you to choose where you would like to participate, what group you think makes the most sense for you today. I do recognize some of you are probably interested in more than one group. There's almost many of you, I'm sure, you could join more than one of these groups. But I do, for today, we're going to ask that you sort of choose what you think would make the most sense. Yeah, sorry, Laura, if you can clone yourself and send yourself to 2 groups, go ahead. But otherwise, we're going to ask you to think about, for today, who would you like to meet? What would you like to talk about? Let's see. Oh, okay.
And if you have a different idea that's not on this list, please put that in the chat, right, Jody?
Yes, thank you, Astrid. That's a really important point. It does look like pretty much everybody has weighed in, or close to everybody, which I really appreciate. Oh, it looks like a few more coming in. It's telling me 100%, and then people keep answering. That's interesting. Yeah, I would really like to encourage some creative thinking if anybody does. And so far, it looks like everybody has chosen one of our choices instead of other. But if you do have any other thoughts, even if you've already voted, we certainly, maybe even if we don't do that today, I'd still be interested in any other thoughts you have for the future. Oh, now I see. Okay. Yes, I see. I think everybody except us as co-hosts have weighed in. So let's see. Wendy, do you want to, or Astrid, do you want to share the results with us? Can people see those results now? Yeah, okay, great. So looking at results, it does look like there's only it looks like we have pretty small groups for corrections and science and social studies. So I think open to any thoughts that anybody has about that, about whether you might shift your vote out of that group into another group, or whether somebody might shift in. Okay, yeah, so people could maybe shift into there. Matt, Andy, I think your presence in the math group is really important. So I guess I would say, so Wendy and Astrid are going to help behind the scenes here to set up these rooms before later in our time today, we will have you choose the room. I guess what I would say, sorry, Andy, yes, typecasting. What I would say is let's go ahead and create all 6 of these groups. But if they're too small, we might pop in and ask you to join another group. Okay, yeah, I feel good about that. Wendy and Astrid, do you feel like we have what we need in order to do groups later on today?
Yes, I think we do.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you. So do we all just X out of those results on our own screen? Is that how that works? That's what I did.
Yes.
Okay. So yep, you may need to hit the X on your screen to close down those results so you can see the slideshow again. But then let's keep moving. All right. At this point, we want to give you some updates and some reminders, and these are kind of organized into updates and reminders about the 3 online platforms that we have sort of settled into using at this point for our adult diploma processes. So we've got SID, we've got the Atlas website, and we've got Mighty Networks. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about SID, give you some updates and some reminders about what's happening with SID these days. And I'm going to talk through these slides, but I know Jenny is on, so Jenny, feel free to weigh in at any point on any of this. So there is just one sort of new thing in SID since our last meeting. So as you know, you need to build an adult diploma portfolio within SID and then submit it for review. As you finish a full domain, you can submit it for review. The one thing that is new since last time is that Jenny has added for us, or I reached out to Jenny and the magic happened, that now there is a date on when evidence was uploaded. This is really something that is just helpful for us as reviewers, because if we review some evidence and then the reviewers determine that it can't pass for some reason, often you might upload an additional piece of evidence or a revised piece of evidence. And now we will be able to see as reviewers what was the old evidence, what was the original evidence, and what is the new evidence, which is really helpful. Because sometimes, like as you see in this example on the screen, the original was submitted in August and then it was resubmitted again in December. Sometimes, as reviewers, it can be hard for us to remember what we looked at in August. So having them both there is really great. So I will ask that in this scenario, please don't delete that old evidence. Please leave it there for us to remember, what we saw the first time around. And then now with this date, we will be able to see what the updated evidence is clearly. Now, sometimes we are saying, oops, this doesn't pass because you accidentally uploaded the evidence for a different student, or there was some mistake or something. If it was a mistake, if it was a problem, if it was the wrong evidence, if the document was never supposed to be there in the first place, then it's okay to delete it. But if you have an old piece of evidence that didn't pass and we gave some feedback, and then you have an additional piece of evidence or an updated piece of evidence, please leave them both there. Jenny, did you want to say anything about that?
Nope.
Okay,
That's good.
cool. All right, then this is a reminder, and I know Jenny kind of talked this through with you in the fall, but it's still occasionally something that we see, so we wanted to point it out again. It is really important to have your diploma location correct. So there's a screenshot here about where you can manage your adult diploma locations. When you click into that, you will see a list of sites. And you need to be sure that you have the contact information correct here so that it shows correctly on your student's portfolio screen so that we know who to email with review results. Did I say that right, Jenny? Anything else to add?
Great. No, that was good.
Okay, this is a test for me.
Nice job.
Okay. All right, then the next thing, again in the fall, the SID staff rolled out a new process that sends a notification or a message whenever your diploma, your portfolio is updated here on our end by MDE staff. So this is almost always myself or Brandy who are going into the portfolio. We are marking specific areas as either a pass or a not pass. And we are, if it's a not pass, then we will write a comment about why. So we are curious at this point how this is working for you. Those of you who are, have some active students and have been submitting portfolios or domains for review and receiving feedback. How are these notifications going for you? Yes. Atticus Finch is, I believe, a fake student in the sandbox.
Sandbox, that's our little
Thanks.
fake site. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Wally Cleve.
Okay, so Drew said you like messages, working well.
Denise, you won't see a message space on your dashboard unless you actually have a message waiting for you. So, and just so you know, the person who is the staff person who clicks the submit button when you're submitting a domain, that's the person who will be receiving that message. So Denise, if you aren't doing the actual submitting, then you're also not going to get the messages, if that makes sense. Okay, well, I will look into what's going on, Denise.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is true. I think Denise has had some students and portfolios.
What site are you at, Denise?
Denise is with PPL
Okay.
in Minneapolis.
Okay, I will look into that.
Amy's saying I had difficulty figuring out where to find all of the messages beyond the first.
Yeah, so the message screen when you first log in, I'm sorry, the dashboard is only going to show, I think, up to 5 or so. So if you're getting a whole bunch of them, you're going to like have more than just the 5 that are visible. But if you click on any one of the messages, it should bring you to your own staff log page. And Amy was having trouble because she's a staff person at 2 different sites. So her messages were showing up on, is that right, Amy? Is that how I remember it? Your messages were showing up on your home site, but you were logged in on your MDE reviewer account. So it was sort of an unusual situation. But for other folks, you should click on the message and you would then go to your own staff page, the log screen, and you'll see the rest of the messages. Okay, and Janine did not receive one.
Yeah, so Janine, okay. This was the scenario, Jenny, that I emailing you about because Ralu was the one who got the notification, not Janine. Do you want to talk about that situation?
So yeah, there's a little situation that I'm afraid is going to be a straggling one for a little while, but I hope I'm going to be able to stay on top of it, which is we have a whole bunch of completion options for various areas that people toggled maybe like before last summer, long time ago, some of them. And then they sit there toggled, but not yet submitted. And then they get submitted now. And if they were toggled prior to when we made some of the updates, they might not have a staff person's name linked to them. And anything newly submitted as of our updates this summer and fall, they will have a staff person's name linked to them. So we have some records that have a combination of no staff person linked to the particular area within a domain and some with the staff person, if that makes sense. So if somebody toggled it years ago, or not years, well, some of them are years ago actually, where a couple of the items were toggled. Then I'm keeping my eyes behind the scenes on records that have this kind of mismatch of a few old toggled without a staff person associated and new toggles with a staff person. I'm trying to put in the correct staff person's name so that they will get the message, if that makes sense. It's a little bit techno babble behind the scenes. So it is possible that we'll have a few students who one staff person who toggled something a couple years ago will get the message saying it's been updated, while a more recent staff person who's been doing the submitting might not get that message, or vice versa. So I'll try to, if I see some with a combo of different staff who've been doing the toggling and submitting, I might reach out to you and ask you which staff person would be the best one to receive messages that I'm going to have to clean up behind the scenes. In some cases, you're going to have students who will have two different staff person who've submitted. You might be doing that in your program, and that's fine. So just both staff person have to be aware that when they get an update message saying that the record was updated, they might be having to talk to each other about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that does make sense, Jenny. So let me offer a little bit of clarification. So when Jenny is, or just additional information, when Jenny is saying toggle, what we're talking about is there's somebody going into the student's record and choosing which completion, like choosing high school credits or choosing GED test or choosing ABE instruction. So they're choosing a completion option. So whoever is the one who actually, well, if the portfolio is quite old, right, Jenny?
Yeah.
If somebody
yeah.
did that more than 6
Half a
months
year
ago
ago,
now, that's where they might get a little confusing.
Mhm.
At this point, it doesn't matter who selects the completion option, it matters who clicks the
Clicks the
submit
submit.
button, right?
Right.
So I think what you all need to know sort of moving forward, I think Jenny and I can kind of keep in touch with everybody and try to fix those old ones. And Jenny's got her eyes on that. I think the question I have is, does it make sense that whoever actually hits the submit button in SID, so then it sort of gets into the queue for review, that is the person, and that is the only person who is going to be notified in SID. And I just want to confirm with the group that that makes sense and that that person knows that, you know, if you're the submitter, if you're kind of a support staff kind of a role and your manager is also wants to know and needs to be in the loop, or the teacher needs to know and be in the loop, that you as that SID submitter person are going to have to be watching and kind of pass the information on. Does that make sense to everybody? And does that seem like an okay process?
I like how Amy said that they submit with the student, which is cool.
Oh yeah,
in there.
submit with the student a moment of celebration and a reminder that it still needs to be passed. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna try to scroll up a little bit in the chat to see what else. Okay, Amy's saying it would rather to have it come consistently, but we are working, communicating with each other. Yeah, Heather is saying for our program, the person submitting needs to know and can share the info. Okay. And Amy, I agree with your comment a while back. Hopefully we can all keep a little bit of historical perspective, or believe us if you haven't been around this long. We used to do this in a platform called LearnerWeb, and SID is so much better, and it's getting better, and we have capacity to make it better. So yeah, even if it's not perfect, we have a few snafus here and there. It's definitely better than it was in LearnerWeb. I wondered, Jenny, maybe you and I can follow up with Stephanie about Minneapolis and their partner sites and who sees messages.
Okay. Yeah. See, I didn't see that one. Oh,
Maybe that's the issue with Denise. Maybe that's why Denise isn't seeing messages. I'm not sure though.
okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I'll have to know more about how they work with their partner sites to probably understand the ins and outs.
Okay. Yeah, maybe
Okay.
that's what Stephanie.
So Stephanie, are you doing the submitting in that case? The actual clicking of the button that says submit?
Abby said
Abby.
Abby can see the messages. Abby is at Summit Academy, so another partner
Okay,
site.
another Minneapolis partner.
Yeah, I
Okay.
don't submit for them. It's just something I would just say if there's an issue, it might come back to the fact that someone from our admin team has not done something that they were supposed to do. That is one avenue to explore.
Okay.
Yes, worth
Sounds
exploring. And
good.
sometimes I can help from behind the scenes, figuring out what might be going on as well, just so you know. But yeah, usually we can come up with a pretty good solution most of the time, even if there's like a quirky partner relationship with different staff doing different roles. You know, we can usually come up with something that'll work.
Okay. So thank you, everybody, for weighing in on that. I see there's also some chat about the GED subsidy code, so I'm not going to derail us to talk about that, but I wonder if Brandy, if you could kind of weigh in the chat and help people out with that. I'm going to keep us going about SID. So last kind of reminder about SID is that a while back, Jenny created a report for the review team and for the MDE team that helped us sort of manage all of the portfolios for review. And then she thought, wow, that's probably useful for programs as well, and created this adult diploma portfolio report. So I think the question at this point is, are you folks out there using this report? Are there any questions about it? Any feedback? Any other suggestions?
Yeah, and just to point out about this report, this example, the third box down that says submitted during the old process, only I think 2 or 3 programs out there will even have somebody in this scenario. So you might not have that box on your report. That is people, a student whose submission was submitted way back or before the new process last summer. And then that fourth box, that not yet submitted, area selected, that's the group of students that we were just talking about. So if you're curious how many students in your program, because we've got some programs that have lots of students who have a few items that were toggled, as I say, but not yet submitted. So you can get a sense of how many students you have that had been working on diploma in the past and maybe haven't revisited it in a while. But we're always up for tweaking reports or making new reports. If you want a report that just shows, I don't know if I have on this report, just all those folks that have passed. I think maybe that if you were to toggle, this is just a screenshot, but if you were to toggle to the next screen, you would have all the students who passed. But if I don't, and you want such a report, just like contact us at sidsupport@literacyminnesota, literacymn.org. And we're always up for building new reports as well. Good, I'm glad to see people are using it and finding it helpful.
Yeah, we did get one question about where to find this report. Can you give a quick answer to that?
Yeah, so when you're in SID, there's the tab, one of the furthest to the right, called report. So if you click on the reports tab, there's a whole bunch of reports, SID reports about attendance and level gains and all that stuff. And then about partway down are some student reports. And this one's called Adult Diploma Portfolio Report. It's a very boring name, but you'll find it there.
Great. All right, I'm going to keep us going. Jenny, do you want to put the SID support email in the chat in case anybody else has other ideas or feedback for Jenny about SID stuff? Feel free to reach out directly to her.
There it is.
Thank you, Jenny. All right, at this point, some more just reminders and updates about another online platform that we are going to try to use better from here on out. And that is Mighty Networks. So I'm going to turn it over at this point to Brandy to talk a little bit more about Mighty Networks.
Thanks so much, Jody. So with me being new, Mighty Networks is also new to myself. And so this is a great time for us to go back and highlight this resource that was created, not just for ABE, but specifically for the group Adult Diploma. If you do have your Mighty Networks account set up, if you could during this time, go ahead and log in. And if you do not have a Mighty Networks account because you're new, that is thank you, Astrid. You have the link to go and create your account now. So we're going to spend time just kind of perusing Mighty Networks together. So if you look at the next slide, you're going to see, if you log into your Mighty Networks at the top right, you're going to see that little bell. And then once you click on that bell, you're going to see the little icon of the gear. And that's where your notifications are going to come in. And the question is your email frequency set to as activity happens or daily digest? And Jody and I were talking about possibly the notifications not being set to as activity happens. And maybe this is a cause that individuals don't use Mighty Networks as much because we're not getting notifications when possibly new comments or conversations have been started. Again, if you're not a member, if you can click on that link and you're going to go to Atlas and you'll scroll down to the bottom where you see join the conversation, and you'll see the link to quickly create your account. So if you are either already in your Mighty Networks, if you could be checking your email notifications, or if you are currently creating your account and then going into the notifications slide and making sure that your frequencies for notifications are set. And if you can go to the next slide, please. What we're wanting to do is log into Mighty Networks. And if you have any advice, responding to people's posts, as well as creating conversation. So once you are in Mighty Networks, you are going to go to your Minnesota Standard Adult High School Diploma tab. And if you have not joined that tab, you can look for it, and then it will send Jody and other individuals a notification to give you access to that account, or the setting, I want to say. And if you look inside your Mighty Networks page and you scroll down on the Adult High School Diploma, you're going to see a question that Matt Fisher had posted back in October. And sadly, no one knew about it because we didn't see the notifications. And so we wanted to take this time to, as a learning, to everyone take a look at what he had posted. And if you have any recommendations, let's go ahead and post your answer. So this is going to give us a chance to see how to work on posting, as well as how to see if notifications are coming back about being able to see if the comments were made. And this is a time for us to just kind of use this platform real quickly and just play around with it. So thumbs up in the group chat or verbal, everybody's at Mighty Networks. Are we being able to navigate everything okay? Or are there any questions currently? I don't see any chats coming through, so it looks like everybody's kind of working. Got it. I see Carolyn.
Yep. Yeah, and just a note, Brandy, I think we had planned to spend some time on this, but we are a little behind our schedule. So I think we should keep going. Although, wait, let's pause and answer Megan's question of I am in Mighty Networks, but how do I get to
Thank you, Megan.
group?
So you should see under groups, you'll be able to find groups that you want to join. And then you should be able to see the MN Adult Diploma, and that it'll tell you request to join that group.
Yeah, so this is, I'm clicking into my Mighty Networks account now. Yep, so you're going to look for it here, and then you're going to click on the request access. It doesn't show up for, I don't have a request access button because I'm already in it. But it is the group that looks like this, Minnesota Standard Adult High School Diploma, and you should have a request access button. Good.
Fantastic. So if you are new to Mighty Networks, you should be adding this account. And if you have already been in Mighty Networks, if you're seeing that post from Matt, just thinking about being able to come back to this at a later time and give your opinions and your recommendations. And the goal is that we start to use this resource as a conversation piece and to share information and knowledge, as well as ask questions that maybe other people in the field know. And just to kind of constantly have that ability to conversate back and forth. And if you can see, most recently, I posted this morning is an update on the competency completion options. And so you can also post documentations and files and pictures. And this is a sharing resource for other individuals. So we really want to be able to utilize this at its capacity for everyone in Adult Diploma to have access to up and coming lessons and ideas going around the state. So if you go to the next slide, please. Increasing the value of that, what we talked about is you're going to see when you reach out via email to Jody and I, if it's a basic question of recommendation or ideas about a certain student or looking for ideas on certain lessons, we might ask you to post that in Mighty Networks so then other people can benefit from the conversation piece that started. And myself, I'm going to be checking Mighty Networks on a weekly basis to make sure that I'm catching all questions that are coming through. And if you send them to us, you might get that email back saying, hey, this would be a great conversation piece. Can we post it in Mighty Networks to keep that conversation going for other people? So just a heads up that you may see that kind of reply coming from us because we really want other people to benefit from it. And then the last slide, or the next slide.
I think that's the last one about Mighty Networks, Brandy. Yeah.
Perfect. And so I'm going to give it back over to Jody now.
Thank you. So yeah, as Brandy said, we're going to try to use this a little bit better and try to, when we get general questions, we're going to try to encourage you all to put those questions on Mighty Networks so everybody can benefit. So yeah, please do be thinking strategically about how you can be using Mighty Networks going forward. And I hope you see that in those of you who have gotten in there, in our Standard Adult High School Diploma group on Mighty Networks, one of the top posts now is the competency completion options document, which we are going to talk about more today. So if you see that there, you can grab it. And I'm going to show you where else you can get that document. We got a couple places for you to find it. So the third online platform that I just want to update and remind you about today is the Atlas website, and specifically the Adult Diploma Resource Library on the Atlas website. So this is the place where when you are saying, oh, I want the transcript analysis form that I've seen in meetings, or I need to look at the competency completion options document, or I want to look back and remember what happened at the last working group meeting. This is the place for those kind of resources. So I do encourage you to go ahead right now and navigate to the Atlas website. So the link is here on the screen, atlasabe.org. If you go to atlasabe.org/resources, you'll get to those resource libraries. You will want to click on the Adult Diploma Resource Library. One thing that I know often trips folks up is that some of these resources for Adult Diploma are behind a password. The reason we did that is because we do require a minimum amount of training and participation from Adult Diploma staff. So we didn't want all of the resources to just be publicly available. Unfortunately, sometimes it kind of looks like when you click on a resource, it looks like you just get a blank screen, but pay attention up towards the upper left corner. There may be a password box. And so that is where you need to put in the password, which is MN Diploma, one word, no caps. Not a big secret or anything, but just sort of a layer of, making sure that that folks have to have the right background and training before accessing materials. And quickly, just some reminders about what you will find there. These example capstone projects are there. We talked a lot about these in the working group meetings over the last year or so. These are example tasks that are available for everyone to use. The tasks have student-facing materials, they have resources for teachers. These are usable things, particularly if you have a student who is going to be doing adult basic education as their completion option within the Adult Diploma portfolio, and you need a culminating activity to use as evidence in the portfolio. These are good places to start. And just a shout out to the team of folks who worked on this project, who put in a lot of time and effort on this project over the last couple of years. So Christine from Atlas was the manager of that project, and Christy, Jen, Chris, and Stephanie were the task writers. And so those resources are there, and just want to encourage you all to be aware of those and using those. Another thing that is on the Atlas website that I want to make sure that you're aware of are training resources. So this fall, we did some in-depth training for new staff and new programs. We did it in 2 parts over 2 days. And so the recordings for both of those are on the Atlas website. The first one was in September, on September 16th. The second one was in October. The one in October was specifically about high quality evidence and what does that look like. Both of those have a lot of good resources and good materials, especially if you have anybody new at your program or you're kind of just getting started and wanting more of the basics. I encourage you to look at those resources. And then importantly, the Atlas website is another spot where you can get the new competency completion options document. And I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead because I do think it's important, and I see a message in the chat. I am going to walk you through how to get onto the Atlas website and the resource library. Ooh, look, there's new activity in the Mighty Networks group. That's awesome. Thank you, everybody, for a new activity. So here is the URL for the resource library, atlasabe.org/resources. I am going to scroll down on the resource page to get to this resource library, which is Adult Diploma. I'm going to scroll down on this page and show you a couple of things. Oops, ooh, I got a lot of windows open here, sorry. So there are some highlighted tasks on this landing page. These are some from those diploma tasks that I was just talking through with you. Over here, this menu is one you will use to navigate to resources. So a lot of the things I'm talking about today are in this standard adult high school diploma category here. There's a couple subcategories. And so the training materials, I'll just highlight that. This is where you can find the materials from the Adult Diploma 101 in September, and the high quality evidence training in October. So that's where you find those materials. And working group resources has other materials that will be useful to you: forms, policy and reference materials, and working group agenda and materials. So this is where working group is where you can go back and find recordings and slides from earlier meetings. And I want to highlight this one right here because this is where you can find, oh, do you see what happened? When it does this and you say, oh, it's a blank screen, this is where you need to enter the password, which is MN Diploma. And then it opens up this resource, and this document, the competency completion options document, is a new document that we just, there's a new draft of this document, a new version of this document as of January 2023. We are just rolling it out to all of you today. We will be talking about this document later today, a couple of times actually. So I do encourage you to have this document open. We'll give you another chance later to open it as well, but I wanted you to see how I got there. Okay. Any questions? Well, maybe I'll pause here for a second. Any questions about SID, about Mighty Networks, or about the Atlas website? Yeah, I see your comment, Laura, of thanking the folks who created and revised the tasks. Yes, I will second that. That was a lot of work, but those are really great resources that are available to the whole group now. Will you let me know in the chat? Yeah, Andy, we were just talking about that right before we launched this meeting of putting a copy of the completion options in PDF. Can we? Yes. Have I done that yet? No. One of the reasons I haven't done it yet is that there's some highlighting currently in it that is just meant to draw your attention right now to where HiSET was added. And I think after today, you can on your own copy take out that highlighting. So yeah, yes, it does make sense to have it in PDF. I did not do that for today. I will do that for the future, and you are definitely welcome to save your copy. The copy, if you just grabbed a copy and are, you know, nervous about changing it, feel free to save it as PDF. All right, I am not seeing any other questions right now. So I am going to pause here actually. Oh, no, wait, I'm going to just say one more thing, sort of in the vein of online platforms and online communication. And that is that just a reminder that in our office, we maintain an adult diploma email list. It is what we use to communicate with you all. We send out announcements about adult diploma and links to participate in this working group meeting to that email list. So it is important to keep it updated as staff are coming and going in your programs who are working with adult diploma. So if you have any updates, go ahead and email those to Neil on our team. They are the one who maintains that list. And also to me, just to keep me in the loop. But just a reminder, if you have any staff who leave your program, or if you add any new staff, to shoot an email to Neil and myself to keep that list updated. All right, at this point, ooh, hang on, let's see. Okay, we are about an hour in. We did plan throughout the meeting today to take a couple of breaks since we have a longer chunk of time. So I am at this point going to encourage you to step away for a few minutes. Let's take a break for about 5 minutes, and please be sure that you are back right at 2:05, and we will get started again. I encourage you, as you take a break, during the break, if you don't have the completion options document open yet, see if you can navigate to it now on the break and have it open, because we'll talk about it soon. All right. Thank you, Wendy. Doing an excellent job remembering the recording. All right, great. So I'm going to keep us going. Yes, thank you, everybody who's chiming in the chat. Good to see you back. So at this point, we have a couple of topics that we really want some input from you all. So this is an opportunity. We'll have another poll, but this will also be an opportunity for you to chime in the chat, and maybe potentially it could be a time where you unmute and speak to the group if you'd like to. So really hoping for some participation and to gather some thoughts from you on a couple of topics. So first question for everybody is about our April working group meeting. So hopefully you have on your calendar that we have a working group. Our next quarterly working group meeting is planned for April, when hopefully the world looks like this outside with tulips and green leaves instead of how it looks now. But we have that scheduled for Monday, April 17th. We have really been shooting and planning to have that meeting in person. which would be the first time in more than 3 years that this group has met in person. However, we have run into some potential snafus with that. One is that while we used to have space at the Department of Education building that we could use for free to convene a whole group, because our MDE team has moved, or the Department of Education is no longer in that building in Roseville. We're in the process of transitioning into a new building in Northeast Minneapolis. We no longer, at least for the moment, we do not have free conference center space available to us. So that suddenly makes an in-person meeting cost more because we have to find a space. And we have some other, so the funds to support this adult diploma working group come from the Literacy Action Network grant, which is why we have Wendy, who works for LAN, Literacy Action Network, here as our tech host today, and why she helps us out. And there's some sort of competing priorities for those funds in the LAN grant. The reviewers have been putting in a lot of time and work to review all of the portfolios that have been submitted. So we are rethinking the question of whether or not it makes sense to spend resources on an in-person working group meeting in April of this year. But before making that decision, for sure, we decided to put it out to the group and really get your input on what you think. I think there is some benefit to convening our group in person. I think we, can do things in person that aren't as effective online. So I do see some value to that. However, that does mean people would have to travel. I know COVID is still a reality. I know some folks are immunocompromised and some folks have immunocompromised loved ones. I know that still plays into your decision of whether you would show up for a meeting with, 60 people in the room. But we're just trying to take the temperature of what everybody thinks in terms of, is it important to you to try to go back to our plan to meet in person or stick with our plan to meet in person in April? If we decide it's not worth it to spend the resources, because hopefully you kind of have that full day set aside on your calendar, we could do something a full day online, not necessarily that you would sit and listen to me all day, but we could do some separate sort of 1 hour conversations about specific things. Or we could kind of stick with what we have been doing basically for 3 years now, which is a couple hours in the afternoon. So thank you to those of you who are, sharing some thoughts in the chat. We actually have a poll because we do want to kind of get folks to weigh in and go on record a little bit about what your preference is at this point. I think we have a poll, right? Wendy, do we have a poll? Thank you. Okay, so Wendy has put a poll out. Please weigh in. It's low stakes, whatever. We won't hold you to it for sure, but please do respond what you prefer, and maybe you have another idea. There is an other option, so if you'd like to choose other, feel free to do that, and then maybe put into the chat a different idea that you have. Great, I see most folks have, many of you have participated. Just a couple more, maybe 30 seconds or so to participate. Yes, Jen, online does it, it makes it more accessible in terms of nobody has to travel. Agreed. Yep. Okay. I think that looks good. It looks like most people, except for us as co-hosts, have answered the poll. So thank you. I appreciate that. Wendy, is that shared? Can people see the results? Are you seeing results? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for confirming, Danelle and Rebecca. So yeah, this is not a surprise to me. It's kind of what we thought as well, that probably the majority of folks want to kind of stick to online. I thought it's interesting that we've got 10 folks who really did see the value of or voted for in person. So that's a useful piece of data for us to consider moving forward. So I think our MDE team and the land team will be talking about this. Yeah, Rebecca, subs are hard to find. Yep, understood. That's a really good point. And that's actually something that's different now than it was 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, isn't it? Yeah, really good point. So we'll take this into account. I think it's quite likely that it makes the most sense to shift our plan for this April working group meeting and have it online, and probably, just an afternoon like we have been, but we will be sure to confirm that with all of you soon. But thank you for weighing in on that. That is really helpful. You can go ahead and close those survey results or the poll results on your screen. And then I have a related question for you. So at this point of the year is often when we are talking about setting up quarterly working group meetings for the upcoming school year, even though it seems like that's kind of a long way off, but this is the time for us to be looking at that. So tentatively, these are the dates we're looking at for working group meetings in the upcoming school year. We have typically had these quarterly meetings on a Monday, but we've decided several years back to do the summer one on a Tuesday because people are often traveling in the summer. So I do invite you quickly to take a look at your calendar, check out those dates, and let us know in the chat if you see any problems or any conflicts with any of those dates. Yeah, we definitely recognize there are some folks who are not going to be available for certain specific dates, and that's fine. Often the attendance at that the July 1 tends to be a little smaller, which is understandable. All right, yep. Okay, great. Not seeing anything currently so far. Okay, good to know. And then, yep. If anybody else sees any conflicts or anything we need to consider about those dates, feel free to put that in the chat. My next question to you is, as we look at these 4 dates, do you have any thoughts or any preferences about longer term online meetings as opposed to in-person meetings? One thing we have considered is to try to do 2 of these meetings, probably the fall and the spring, as in-person, and 2 of them virtual, probably summer and winter. Yeah, Karen is saying online is fine, but 1 a year in person would be great. That's kind of where I land too. Yeah, Christy, that would be it would be a long drive for you from Williston. That's true. Hybrid, yeah, I think hybrid is something we might want to consider. Hybrid is trickier than either in person or all virtual. Yeah, I do see some support in the chat with 1 in-person meeting. Okay, yeah, that's helpful. And also just to reiterate, for those of you who would travel more than, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if it's more than 50 miles one way, that you could get reimbursement for mileage and hotel costs. All right, Astrid has confirmed that is correct. But we know that even with reimbursement for your expenses, it still requires your time to travel. So that is a consideration. And yes, agreed, weather is a consideration in a lot of the year for hosting in-person meetings. So yeah, that's a really good point. Definitely, I think we would not plan to do January in person. But even April can sometimes be problematic weather around here. Oh, Abby, I see hybrid. Yeah, right. Okay, so if people are throwing out the hybrid option, could be a couple of different ways that looks. But yeah, having hybrid as some meetings in person and some online. Okay, great. Thank you. That is really helpful. So we will, again, in email communication, confirm for you these dates and what format, either in person or online, to expect for those dates. But we'll do that in a follow-up email sometime soon. So thank you for your input on that. And then just one other thing that we are kind of an idea that our MDE team has been kicking around a little bit, that we just want to float out to the group at this point and see what input you have for us. So particularly Brandy and myself recently have run across a few scenarios where we have wished that there was a provider that would be equipped and ready to do adult diploma work online, and who could work with students anywhere in the state, so that we'd be able to serve a few more folks who, for whatever reason, aren't easily served by their program, by their local program. So first of all, I just want to sort of open the floor to see if anybody has any thoughts about that idea, either in favor or against. Obviously, this would require some currently existing program to sort of raise their hand and be willing to serve students in this way. We wouldn't force any program to do this, but it would require somebody being interested. Okay, I see, Megan. The other, another sort of factor about this is that we have, I hope you are all aware that this year we are offering some online statewide career focused courses. So there's a couple different programs across the state that are offering a online class that's available to any ABE student across the state. Paraprofessional is one, and TEAS prep is another. And so we're sort of thinking that we might be able to carve off a little bit of the same of our federal adult ed funding that we're using to support those online statewide classes, to support if there was a provider that was interested in doing this. Yeah, yep. Sorry, I'm just looking back at the chat. So it looks like there is some interest. Yeah, so to answer the question, what have been the scenarios that you have wished it already existed? We recently had a student who had been enrolled in one adult diploma program years ago, and didn't work for them to participate in that program anymore, and they were really looking for something online. So that is a scenario that came up. Yeah, and Karen makes a good point. Then folks who are being released from correctional facilities could be told about that resource regardless of what community they are going to end up working in. Yeah, Stephanie points out, yeah, there could be issues with students' previous work being accessible if they're moving from an old program. Yep, some questions about how it would work. Heather asks, would it be synchronous? And I think all of those details would remain to be seen. Amy thinking about being a provider for one or two domains, but not the whole portfolio. Okay, well, that's helpful. Thank you. That's really kind of what we wanted at this point, is just to see, like, do folks think that's a good idea at all? Yeah, Teresa, I see your point about, yep, when you have an one-room schoolhouse, it can be hard to offer all of the programming you need. So an online program helps expand that. Yep, Christine, sounds like you heard from somebody recently. Okay, good to know. I think we have enough evidence here to know at least that it's worth talking more about this option. So I'm going to bring that back to our MDE team and to the land folks to think about what possible next steps with that could be. So hold on for a little more information about that at some point. Thank you very much for weighing in. That was really helpful. All right, we already took a break. Okay, at this point, I'm going to give you some updates about sort of current reviews and turn it over to Brandy to talk about some recent things we've learned about evidence. So in terms of the review queue and portfolios and domains that are waiting to be reviewed, we have a lot. There's, you know, it's great. It's great how this diploma has grown over the years. So currently we've got 13 students that have full portfolios that are in the process under review. Some of those have some domains already passed. Some of those are waiting for resubmits, but 13 of those. And in addition, we have another 63 students who have at least one domain, but not the whole portfolio submitted. So it's a lot. Ever since we turned on the option to be able to submit partial portfolios in July, we have a pretty high volume of reviews and portfolios being submitted. So on that note, I just want to remind you and kind of clarify what it looks like the timeline is going to be, at least for now. So if you submit a full portfolio, the whole thing, all 5 domains, or you submit the final or the last domain and the others have already been passed, we will get to that review within 30 days. So we, meaning the review team, plus myself and Brandy. If you submit a partial portfolio, so 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 domains, but not the whole thing, we are doing those first in, first out. We were hopeful that we would eventually get to a place where we could be able to do all of those within 30 days, but it has not been possible. And the reason it's not possible is because the reviewers are looking carefully at every single piece of evidence. So definitely go ahead, keep submitting it. Yeah, I see, I'm looking at your comment. Laura, yeah, thank you, Laura, for giving us some breathing time to catch up. It's fine, go ahead and submit. Just know that we prioritize the ones that have all 5 domains finished and submitted for review, because then we know there's nothing left for you and your student to do and you're just waiting on us. So yeah, I don't mean to discourage you from submitting partial portfolios. I just want you to be realistic with yourselves and with your student about what the timeline is. Now, that being said, anytime, if you have some urgency, if your student has some urgency, if they're applying to college, if they're being released from the correctional facility, you know, any of those things, shoot me and Brandy an email and we will do our best to, you know, shuffle things and add a little, you know, add some review time. So we'll try to work with you, but just know that, yep, reviews take some time to work through. Yeah, I see your question, Denise, about whether there's a way to push up transcript reviews if you've already submitted everything and then find out something doesn't count. You've waited a full month to let the person know. Yes, it totally makes sense. And unfortunately, there is just no other way to do it. We know that some pieces of evidence are simple to review, like GED tests, and some pieces of evidence are more difficult to review, like high school transcripts or ABE instruction, and we just at this point don't have the capacity to differentiate between those. We just have them first in, first out. I am hopeful that over time we will get better at that, but I can't promise it in the near future based on the volume that we have. So I hear you and we're doing our best. All right, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy to just talk about a couple of things that have come up in reviews lately and just some recommendations for you as you're submitting evidence.
Thanks again. So one of the things that we have come across with our reviewers is the when the evidence is being uploaded, we see different styles of the documentation, either in Word document. But the best document that works for us is using PDF. So if you are able to save your evidence or documentation that you'll be uploading, if you could do that in a PDF form, it makes it a little bit easier for the reviewers to open and access as well as review. Of course, there are sometimes there's going to be issues, so maybe making a comment would be helpful. You know, tried to upload PDF, it didn't work, but the majority, if you could do that, it works best for our reviewers. The next is submitting GED scores. We've seen a couple of different styles of ways that individuals like to upload. So if you can go to the next slide, you'll see that when you are in your GED manager and you have access to your student, you're able to log in and find their current passing or attempted GED scores. And if you click on that score, then it'll show you if it's a GED ready, which is a practice, of course, or it'll show you if it's an actual GED test. But the document that comes up to print could be several pages long, and they do look very similar to one another, the GED ready and then the actual MyScore report. And so another option would be, if you can go to the next slide, is if you are able to right click on the entire screen, you can save that copy and it'll be an entire printout of that page from GED Manager, and it'll have your student's name as well as the results, and you can see if it's a GED ready or if it's a passing score. So that's one option or one way of uploading some GED scores to make it a little bit easier, so you're not having to upload multiple pages and the reviewers aren't wondering if it's a passing correct score or if it's a GED ready. Sometimes when we go to look at multiples throughout the day, your eyes can start to wander up from you. The next option would be, as we've seen, is individuals that can go into the student's specific GED account. And that's where you go to My Scores. And when you click on My Scores, as if you were in the student's account, you'll get a page like this. And it's the GED test history. And it separates it between the GED scores as well as the GED ready practice scores. And we do see this page uploaded as well. So either one works best because it's just a one page and the reviewer can very quickly identify which test is passed and which one is being used as evidence. And so we just ask if individuals can look into being able to use those two different options. We know sometimes you can't get into the GED account as easily. And so it makes it a little bit easier if you go through that manager's account. And I know corrections sometimes has that access to the GED account for the student because you create it. So you have either option, which way works best for you. So those are just a couple of updates and best practices that some of the reviewers have reached out about. And we just wanted to share those with everyone.
All right, thank you, Brandy. I do see, Nancy, your comment about that one page. I'm not sure which one you're referring to that is not official and cannot be used, but both of the examples that Brandy showed here, sorry, I was trying to go back. Let's see, well, this is the preferred one, but what we have shown here are things that we have accepted, as long as it's either from the student's account, or if you don't have access to the student's account, then you can print out the other one. Is that right? Did I say that right, Brandy?
Yes, this one's from the student's account. And so depending upon how your program works, you can get into it easily and print it. The other page was from GED Manager directly. And so instead of clicking on the score and it populating a multi-page document and then having to save it and then upload it as evidence, you can just right click and then it populates the screen of GED Manager showing the test scores. And so it'll show if it's a GED ready or if it's an actual passing score, which could be used as evidence.
And Brandy, I'm wondering if you know the answer to Megan's question in the chat. Megan asked, should we hide GED ready in the GED manager view?
If that's something that you remember to do when you're doing this specific task, but I would hate for you to have to remember to go back and make sure that it's not hidden on your day-to-day use. So of course, when you're looking at it, the manager, it'll specifically say GED ready or GED test score. And we as the reviewers can see the difference between those two if there's multiples within the student's account from the manager view. And so we'll be able to see the difference between the two pretty easily.
Yep, great, thank you. That makes sense. And then I think, yeah, Amy is weighing in maybe what is helpful of what Nancy was thinking about. Yes, thank you, Amy, for the reminder. Sometimes we have seen people include evidence that's just a screenshot from SID, and we have not accepted that as an official evidence. We are asking from something out of either the student's GED.com account or GED manager. So that makes sense. Yep. Great, thank you. I'm going to keep us going. So next we've got just a little bit more discussion and guidance about using high school transcripts and credits, which I feel like is something we keep coming back to because it's a lot and it's hard. So as we get going on that, here is one point that we are going to look at the competency completion options document. So I'm going to pause here and I'm going to ask you, do you have this document open? And if so, where did you find it? Go ahead and put that in the chat. Did you find it on Mighty Networks? Did you get it from the Atlas website? Got it. Thank you, Christy. And I will just remind you what those two places look like. So remember, this is Mighty Networks. Our standard adult diploma group has Brandy posted it here in Mighty Networks. Excellent. And then also remember, it is here on the Atlas website in our, I'll go back a little bit, in the resource library, the adult diploma resource library, standard adult high school diploma. Ooh. No, not training materials. Ooh, did you see me pause there? Working group resources. Policy reference and overview. Okay, I do see some of you, I think my chat's going by kind of fast, but I think I may have seen some of you said, oh, I've gotten it from the Atlas website before. That's great. However, what we are asking you to do today is to download this newest version. So just so you know, this is sort of a living document. We do update it periodically. So we would like to make sure that everybody has the most up-to-date version, which is this one. The way you know that it's the most up-to-date is because it has the date of January 12th, 2023 on the first page. And also in the document title, it says January 2023. So even if you have an old version, which I'll admit is almost exactly the same, we would like you to have this new version open today. All right, thank you to everybody for indulging me. It looks like most people have got it, so I'm going to keep going. Let's see. Here. Okay, so in this document, we are going to talk a little bit now about using high school credits as the completion option. First of all, we're going to talk specifically about using high school credits for ELA. So a couple of sort of background things for you to keep in mind, and then we'll look more specifically at the completion options document. First off, just a reminder, every single portfolio must contain a student writing sample that shows level E mastery of both writing and language. That is a non-negotiable. So even if you are using high school credits for ELA, your student still has to have a writing sample. Okay, so just want to start there, starting point. also want to remind you that there is a distinction between a credit and a course. So on the completion options document where you see the word credit, what that was referring to is 1 year's worth of class with passing grades. Of course, it doesn't count if they failed it. Versus a course, which a course, what we are saying is that it is listed on a transcript and it has a passing grade, but a course, we don't specify a length of time. So it could be that a course is a whole year. It could be that a course is a semester. It could be that a course is a trimester or potentially a quarter. Okay, so that is an important distinction to keep in mind. We'll talk more about that in a second. And also keep in mind that English instruction in high school, so reading, writing, and language, that content defined by, those sets of 9th through 12th grade standards, content standards, all of that is typically divided over 4 years of high school English classes. In other words, English 9, 10, 11, and 12 all have some reading, some writing, and some language content in them, which is different than math, where the separate areas are typically taught separately in separate years. So in other words, for example, all algebra standards could be covered in 1 year, and all geometry standards could be covered in the following year. And that's why they are treated a little bit differently in our adult diploma. Karen, yes, some schools give 3 or 4 credits for a year. Transcripts are very tricky that way. Totally true. So when we are talking in terms of evidence for the standard adult diploma, you have to figure out how many credits equals 1 year. Yep. Yes, agreed. People chiming in the chat about that complicated issue. Okay, so let's talk specifically about using English credits. Now, this is a screenshot from the completion options document. Somebody who is looking, well, many of you, I hope, are looking at that document. Can you find for us and tell us what page of the document did I get this screenshot from? It's kind of a long document, but I do want you to get some familiarity with how it is organized. Abby says 9. Is she right? Ooh. 9. Julie says 29, but yeah, I think you just had an extra digit in there. Yes, I have to admit, I don't want to click off of my screen here. So I believe you. Page 9 is probably correct, but it is the section that the ELA section that starts after there is quite a long initial section that we're actually going to talk about in a few minutes here. But then it breaks down by different domains. So this is drawn from where it starts to give you specific information about completion options for ELA. And all of the completion options have letters and numbers because there's kind of a long list of them. So the very first option is this A1. If you have a student come to your program who has a high school transcript and they completed 4 years of high school English, then the only other thing they need to do for their standard adult diploma portfolio would be to have that writing sample. Now, we know this is not a super common occurrence, probably because typically a student who has that much, who finished all 4 years of high school English probably graduated. But we know we see it occasionally. Maybe they missed a Phi-Ed credit or a fine arts credit or something. So that is the first way you could potentially use ELA English credits, is if they have 4 years worth. The next option on your completion options document is if you have a student that has 3 credits or 3 years of high school English language arts. In this case, you can use that then as evidence for all 4 areas. However, you also have to have that student do some additional work, a project, You might, for example, look at the tasks, the sample tasks on the Atlas Resource Library. But you will need to also submit student-produced evidence that shows mastery of level E in reading, in speaking and listening, and of course, the writing sample that would demonstrate mastery of one standard for writing and one standard for language. So if they have 3 years, they'll still have to submit some additional work, but you could use high school credits as the completion option. And then there's just one more scenario where you can use high school, your students' high school English credits. And that is if they have a course that has a specific name. So if it's not just titled English 9, English 10, but if they have courses that have a specific name that ties to the domain. So if they have a course like reading or literature, and they have a full credit or a full year in that course, you can use that for reading, regardless of how many total credits they have. Same for composition, you could use that for writing and language, but remember, they still have to do a writing sample anyway. And if they have a course titled speech or something similar, you can use that for speaking and listening. Now notice this option uses the word course, not the word credit. That means that your student does not have to have a full year of speech, because we know that that might often be just one semester. And that is why this refers to a course, not a credit. Note here, this reading option refers to a credit, so this would have to be a whole year. As Christy is pointing out, the distinction between this option A3 and this option that I can't go back to, this A1 option is important, and it recently came up in a review and we had a bunch of communication back and forth, which is why we decided it was a good thing to talk about here in the working group. So just to kind of some important things to keep in mind about this, about using English credits versus math credits. They are a little bit different because of what I spoke about before, in that the different content areas of ELA instruction is spread out across all 4 years. So what that means is, in many cases, you won't be using high school credits as the completion option for your students unless they have at least 3 full years of high school English or 4 years of high school English. And the exception is if they have specifically named courses such as speech or composition or literature. Now, keep in mind, this is different than math, because in math, in many cases, if they have just 1 year or 2 years, or if they have 3 full years or more, you can still use those in the adult diploma as a completion option. But again, that's because math content is delivered differently. It's delivered more sequentially, sort of algebra first and then geometry, and then the algebra 2 or data and statistics. So I'm just going to pause for a second. Is everybody with me? Do you see that distinction between English credits and math credits? Any questions on that? Okay, thank you, Laura, for confirming that that is clear. Has anybody had this, anybody had any examples recently of students with smaller amounts of English credits? So Denise's question, are you saying that if a student has 2 credits, they will need to do all 4 of the domains in ABE instruction? Not exactly. If a student has 2 credits of high school English on their high school transcript, if they have 2 classes, for example, if they have English 9 and English 10, and they have a passing grade in both, then unfortunately, you cannot use that as the completion option for any of the 4 areas of the ELA domain. Now, does that mean they have to do ABE instruction? No, because there are other completion options available. The most likely it would mean they either they need to do ABE instruction for all 4, or they need to pass the RLA GED test, and then they would still need to do something for GED. And in any of these cases, in all of these cases, they need to do a writing sample. And as Christy is pointing out, it depends on what the courses are named. So if they have 2 full credits and they had 1 semester of speech, you could use that as the completion option for speaking and listening. If they have 1 full year of a course that was called composition, you could use that for writing, but they'd still have to do a writing sample. So most of the time, if they only have 2 high school English credits and they were called English 9 and English 10, most likely you aren't going to be able to use that. Now, Andy is pointing out in the chat, you could have some follow-up conversation with the district that awarded the credits and see if they confirm that they teach maybe English 10 focuses specifically on writing, and they cover all of the high school content, all of the content standards that are required for high school English in English 9 and English 10. If you get confirmation from the district that awarded that transcript, that is true, you could certainly, submit documentation of that to us in the portfolio, and we could pass that. But otherwise, it isn't sufficient evidence of completion. So Denise's question, we know that English 9 and English 10 would include reading, correct? Of course we do. What we do not know is that the student would have completed all reading instruction required in high school. That's why you can't use English 9 and English 10 to show completion of reading, because presumably they were still missing some reading instruction from English 11 and English 12. I see your comment, Amy, about instructional, yep, level E instructional resources. Stephanie, your question about referring to this K-12 standards for English. If you want to make a case that your student has completed reading, for example, in English 9 and English 10, yes, the question to the district would be, did that student complete all of the reading standards, the K-12, the 9-12 standards that are required for English in those high school English classes? Yes. Okay. I'm going to keep us going. I know this is something we can often spend a lot of time on, but I'm going to keep us going. I appreciate the questions and the processing in the chat. That's helpful. Yeah. And then I just wanted to, since we started touching on math, I just wanted to remind you of what the completion options look like for math. Can anybody take a look at your completion options document? Can you find what page I took this screenshot from? If we were in the room together, I would have some candy that I would throw at you if you could get the correct answer. Nice job. 16. Good job. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Nice to know that some of you are hanging in there with me. Okay, so just a reminder about the couple of options that are available for math. There is an option if your student has 3 years of credits, so 3 full years of high school math instruction, that you can use that to complete all 4 areas. They are done. They don't have to do anything additional. The other option is single courses. So if they have less than 3 years total, take a look at the names of the courses that they have, and they can usually be used to complete 1 or 2 or 3 areas. An important note about using high school credits for math: you cannot use this option, this A2 option, to complete all 4 areas. In order to use high school credits as the completion option for all 4 areas of math, a student has to have 3 total years of math instruction. This is something that's also recently come up in portfolio reviews. A reminder that we have periodically in these working group meetings been talking about high school transcripts and using high school credits. So I want to point you to, if you want more conversation, if you want repetition of what I just talked about in terms of using high school credits for math, we did talk about that in depth back in July of 2021. That recording is available on the Atlas Resource Library. We also developed a document at that time that really was kind of a flow chart to help you think about how to use math high school credits in the adult diploma. Right, and if you have questions about that, thank you, Andy. Good point. When we break out into groups, go to the math group and Andy can help clarify that. Heather is asking a question about personal finance. I don't, maybe Andy can weigh in if I am wrong on this, but I do not believe that personal finance typically would align to the core math standards for number sense, algebra, geometry, or data and statistics. Might be a little bit of a case-by-case basis that we would accept that, but we might need some additional documentation from the district. Okay, yep, good point from Andy that it could, if the student has 3 total years, including personal finance, that could be the A1 option, right? But we wouldn't consider personal finance to be completion for either algebra or geometry or data and statistics. Yeah, thank you, Andy, that's helpful. Yep, good, thanks, Heather, good question. Okay, I'm going to keep us going. So again, just a reminder that we talked about science back in October of 2021. So if you've got any specific questions about science, you might want to peek back at that conversation. We've sort of always meant to talk a little more about social studies. We haven't quite gotten there yet. But as we are, working on guidelines for all of these, I just want to acknowledge that all of these are kind of guidelines, and man, transcripts are tricky and student scenarios are tricky. Some students went to high school decades ago. So we're never going to get to a perfect point where we can, make it easy for all of you with every student in every scenario, but we're doing our best. And which leads me to the this that I have mentioned a fair number of times before at working group meetings, and we still have the idea on the table. We're still hopeful to make this happen in the upcoming year. We'd really like to convene a separate group of folks from within this group who have some specific expertise about high school transcripts and high school credits to really try to document what we know about this and some best practices, maybe an FAQ, sharing knowledge, and then hopefully developing some training materials. So stay tuned for that. We've had some folks kind of raise their hands in previous meetings. So we still have a short list of folks potentially interested in that. If anybody listening to me right now feels like you have some expertise and would like to contribute and be part of that group, feel free to put that in the chat. Marian, I see your question about science. That was back in the fall of 2021. So yes, that earth and space science question is one that comes up sometimes. Yeah, there's a lot of history to that. So pop into the science group today, perhaps, if you want to talk some more about that. All right. Any other questions at this point about high school credits, completion options, or anything else? All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. Thank you to everybody who's been asking questions and answering questions in the chat. Good to know that it is helpful. So I'm going to pause right now. And since we're right about at 3 o'clock, I'm going to give you another chance to step away for a minute, take care of yourself. Let's see, let's reconvene just a couple minutes at about 3:02 or so. And we, when we come back, we're going to talk through the updates to that competency completion options document, and then we're going to give you a chance to break out into some subgroups and have some smaller group conversations. So thanks, everybody. Take a break for a few minutes, and we'll see you back here in about 5. This is Brian. Thank you, Wendy, for remembering the recording. Brian, I feel kind of like that emoji right now. So appreciate that. All right. Yep, got it, Laura. So we just have sort of one more piece of content to talk through with you, and then give you some time and space to talk a little bit more to each other in some smaller groups. So last thing for today is to, or second to the last thing, I guess, is to talk through the updated version of the competency completion options document. So we have referred to this already a couple of times today, and now my question for you is, have you saved this document? And where will you find it again after this meeting? Remember, this is the updated version. Today is the first time for most of you that you've had a chance to access this document. So you probably have an old document, which is fine. But please do make sure that this is the document that you are using going forward. So, yep. So Christy says you uploaded it to the shared drive. Thank you. That sounds very appropriate. Removed the old one. Nice job. Yep. Now's the time. Find your folder in your Google Drive. Megan shared it in the save drive and on the laptop. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I just want to make sure that you're hearing the message here today. To be using this document going forward. We will, as a follow-up, send out an email that will also have the document attached, but hopefully all of you who are in the Zoom here today will already have it before then. Yeah, great. Agreed, Drew. I use this document all the time. Doing reviews and just answering questions. So, yep, it is an important one to have around. So we do want to share with you what is updated about this document at this point. And basically the short answer is what's updated is that HiSET has been added. So Brandy's going to walk us through that. But before she does that, I just wanted to take a moment to remind you or let you know, if you didn't, of what's at the beginning of this document, because often when I get general questions about different adult diploma things, I go to this document to find the answer. So I just want to walk you through the first 8 or so pages of this document are really overview and general information. Some of this may actually be useful as you are sort of explaining adult diploma to other folks around you, or, you know, talking through different kinds of programming. You might want to refer to some of this language. So sorry, I apologize. I know scrolling on the screen is not that a super great thing to do, but I do just want to show you a few things that are in here. One thing that is in this document is the outline of student eligibility. This has not changed, but I just want you to know and remember that if you're ever asking questions about who is eligible for our program, this is the place or one of the places where it is specifically recorded. So do be aware of that. Also, when you're thinking just about in general, what are completion options and how do they work, this is where it is outlined. I also really encourage you, if you haven't already, to really take a look at this breakdown of evidence, the different kinds of the different completion options and what the evidence should include. So those are, you should really be familiar with that in order to build a portfolio at all. And excuse my scrolling again, and sometimes we will get this question: what do we need for every portfolio? And this section outlines the things that are required for every portfolio, including that piece of student writing that we were talking about. And this gives you the whole list of requirements about that piece of student writing, including if you do argumentative as opposed to informative. And the other thing that has to be in every portfolio is a resume. So there's a little bit about here about accommodations and then where to find resources. So I just wanted to make sure before we dive in any further that you are all familiar with what's in the beginning of this document, and that a lot of that is sort of basic background reference information that I hope you are familiar with and using as questions come up. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy, who's going to talk about HiSET. And I will just point out, as I mentioned earlier, sorry again for the scrolling, look away if you need to. On this version, we have some highlights. What we have highlighted for you is where we have added HiSET, so that it just makes it easier to scroll through and find those spots. If you'd like to, after today's meeting, you're welcome to save another version that doesn't have those highlights. They don't mean anything except for that it's easier for us to find those spots as we are having the conversation today. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brandy to walk us through how we added HiSET here.
Thanks so much, Jody. The first thing that we wanted to really talk about and discuss is the HiSET score and what it means. So then that way it has a little bit of an easier understanding of why we chose the different options when it comes to the competency completion. So if you look at the smaller circle with inside, you have the essay, which it needs to be a points of 2 or higher out of 6 to pass the writing portion domain of the HiSET score. So that, like the old 2002 series GED, you have to reach a minimum of 2 or higher to be able to have your essay or the writing portion passed. So you could, in a sense, have your writing portion of the options of additional questions, and you pass that, but you didn't pass the essay portion, and you fail the writing as a whole because you did not pass the essay. So then the next is the single domains, and they have to reach a minimum of 8 out of 20 to pass that domain. But then if you look at the overall score, it has to be a total of 45 or higher out of 100 for the entire HiSET. So if a student were to just obtain 8 points per domain, they do not pass the HiSET because they haven't reached that minimum score of 45. So just having that prior knowledge and understanding of the test and how the scores work will help you understand going into those competencies. So on the next slide, you can see that we've chosen option 1 is for ELA, a HiSET score of 9+, and that's for the reading only. But then when you look into writing and language, not only with that 9+, but there also has to be the writing sample, just like we have on the GED options as well. So we mirrored those very closely. The other option is you have a HiSET score of 8. And the difference is on the reading, you also have to demonstrate that competency within 1 level E standard. And so we add that additional competency to be completed. If you go to the next slide for math, we have option 1 mirrors just like ELA or RLA, the HiSET of a 9+. And then of course with an 8, you have to demonstrate the competency of a level E standard. It gets a little bit easier when you get to science and social studies. So on the next slide, you can see for option 1, it's that 9+ score. And then option 2, we're adding that demonstrated competency. And then you'll see this mirrored as well in social studies on the next slide. So this explains why the two options are there, because you have that passing score of a domain with an 8, but that 9 is really what's being sought after to have a completed passing HiSET. On the next slide, using HiSET and the test portfolios, the reason we wanted to bring this to your attention is we have seen some students coming into the state that have had some HiSET prior interaction. And until we're able to test them ourselves here in the state of Minnesota, you might want to start looking into using those prior HiSET scores and completing their portfolios. So either students who may eventually take the HiSET coming up in the future, or students who have previously taken that HiSET, and now you're able to start intertwining those competencies on those options. If a student has passed one or more HiSET in another state, you'll need to include the official documentation. Once we get HiSET up and running, you'll have an account, just like GED Manager for your area. But until then, if you need access to scores for evidence, you can always reach out to me, and I can reach out to HiSET to try to help obtain those scores. And of course, if the student has access to their HiSET account, just like their GED account, they can go in and find their official score report. So those are 2 ways to gain proper evidence when uploading that documentation if need be. Really, it's kind of fairly basic. If there are any questions specifically around these 2 options, we just wanted to be able to bring those to your attention of how that competency document has been updated. I'm thinking everybody's good.
Yeah, sounds like it. Thank you, Brandy. I'm curious whether folks, have you had any students that have had HiSET tests from other states?
I haven't had much come across my desk as well. So I've had probably, that I can remember, 2 individuals reach out to me about needing to continue their HiSET. So it's nothing that we're seeing at an abundance, but we wanted to go ahead and be prepared for when it does start happening.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It looks like a couple folks have seen them. So now I think, I think it's just an important reminder, as Brandy said, that like this means this could apply obviously if when we roll out HiSET here in the state of Minnesota, then we can start using them. But now that we have added this to the completion options, it also makes it possible for you to use them for students who've sort of already taken it in other states. So hopefully that occasionally comes in handy and just is another option for students, which we like. Great. Okay, thank you, Brandy. I'm going to keep going since it doesn't look like there are any questions about that. All right, so at this point, we are back to what we kind of talked about at the beginning, that we wanted to give you some more time to meet and talk with folks who are doing things in a similar way to you or in a similar context in terms of adult diploma programming. Just a reminder, as I said at the top, we're really hoping that this can be both a benefit to you as an adult diploma practitioner, but also a benefit to the whole larger group when we can sort of gather expertise and make informed decisions. So at this point, in just a minute, we will put up a selection of breakout rooms based on what we decided earlier at the beginning of our meeting. Yep, looks like those are up there. And so your task is to click to join. So you'll have to scroll down on the, you'll see a dialog box that comes up. You'll have to scroll down, click to join, and then click into the notes document. Astrid has shared the link in the chat. And we have at the top of that document are some discussion prompts for you to be thinking about and talking about today or now in your group. Those are also here in the chat. So you'll want to click into a group, click on the notes document, and please record some notes for your group. If you are having any trouble getting into a group, if you don't see how to click, or you're trying to click and it's not working, you can let us know either in the chat. Let's see, Heather, which room are you interested in?
And Jody, we're already starting to have folks move into rooms. How much time will they have in their breakout?
Oh, right. Let's say I'm thinking 20 minutes
Okay.
in rooms.
And if they didn't grab the notes before they go into the room, when you're in there, you can't grab them out of the chat anymore. You
Right.
grab the notes before you go to the room, because I just came back and I can't find the notes on the chat now because it started my chat over.
Oh, bummer.
I'll put the notes document in there again.
Thank you. Jody, did you get my question earlier?
I'm not sure, Andy. I'm trying to.
I sent one directly to you, so it didn't go out to everybody.
Oh, okay, I'll look back.
Okay.
Thank you.
So
All right, looks like folks are coming back in. Welcome back. Thank you to everybody for those conversations and for taking some notes. Looks like there were a variety of different kinds of conversations happening in those rooms.
let's do this.
So I think at this point, we can just have some time and space to open the floor a little bit. Were there any questions that came up in your group or any suggestions? That anything you want to bring back to the whole group here? Small but mighty ELA group, Christine says. It is a mighty network. Yes, Andy. Indeed, a facepalm. So any questions that came up in those groups that you want to talk about here in the big group? Or any comments or feedback?
We just discussed and had some clarification in the math group regarding the A1 versus A2 completion options and what the differences were and where that question came from. So that all seems to be clear for the people that were in the math group now.
Good. Thank you, Andy. Appreciate your clarifying that. Yes, Amy, I do recognize that it is tricky for some folks to specialize because you are not specialists, you are generalists, and you have to deal with all subject areas. I get that. And so I'm interested in your thoughts, those of you who feel that way. How do we split out into smaller groups? Because I don't feel like, networking and connecting with each other really works in our big group, but I totally hear you of like, if we divide it out by subject areas, you should be in all of those rooms. So I'm interested if anybody has thoughts or feedback about how we might tackle that issue. Feel free to unmute at this point if you'd like to, turn on your camera, talk to us. I see Sherry. Yeah, have meetings virtually at different times. Yeah, that would be a way. Yep, that would be one. That would be an approach that would alleviate that problem. I feel like it would create a different problem, but yeah, good point. Oops, I saw. Small programs combined to cover each topic. Yeah, I feel like, we have to figure out some way to group people. Yeah, I think the problem is, well, if we offer, say, math at 1 p.m. and ELA at 2 p.m. and science at 3 p.m., what do you do at 2 p.m. if you're not a math teacher? Yeah, yep, I see. Let's see. Susan's comment about breakout rooms are never enough time, so devote more of the meeting to them and come back and regroup and do a couple versions. I actually think that's a good idea, Susan, of sort of allow people to regroup themselves a couple times. Yeah, I see Denise and Andy are both kind of thinking the same thing about having those meetings at a different time. Yeah, that again, it's a little bit of a capacity question in terms of leading those meetings and scheduling those meetings, but yes, I follow. That would be, yep, that would definitely be another way to approach that. Or, right, good suggestion, Amy. Maybe we focus on ELA at one meeting, math at the next. True. Yep, that would be another way to organize that. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, I appreciate those comments and those suggestions. We are getting kind of close to the end of our time here, so I am just going to remind everyone who's still around about upcoming dates. Do plan on Monday the 17th. Looks like as a group we're kind of landing on probably just a regular online webinar type meeting like this one on that date. And then those are tentative dates for next year, but we'll send all that out in an email. I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and all of your input in the large group and the small groups. And I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen right now. Turn on my video. I think you could end the recording, Wendy.